Language Learning Series, The Dutch Secret to English.
All right, let's just jump right in. What if I told you that the world's best English learners aren't actually the super dedicated perfectionists we all think they are? I know, it sounds crazy. We're always told to look at countries like Finland as, the absolute gold standard. But what if there's another way? A better way, even. Today, we're going to break down the Dutch approach, what some might call a lazy method, that might just flip everything you thought you knew about learning a language on its head. So let's just lay out the two big players here. On one side, you've got Finland. And look, they are incredible. They treat English as this high-level skill that has to be perfected, drilled down in the classroom. It's super impressive. But then you've got the Netherlands. And for them, English isn't just a skill to be learned. It's like a second operating system for the entire country. It's a language they can just switch to like flicking a switch. I mean, that's a completely different ballgame. And that really gets to our first big idea here. The real championship isn't decided by test scores. It's decided by how a language actually lives and breathes out on the streets in everyday life. And here's where you really see it in action. In a place like Finland, you might use English in very specific situations, right? Like a business meeting or a conference. But in the Netherlands, it's just the default social setting. The second they hear your accent isn't local, boom, they're speaking English with you. It's not a special occasion. It's not a performance. It's just communication. This all comes down to a really fundamental difference in how they think about the language, which we can boil down to this idea of a tool versus a trophy. And this slide just lays it out perfectly. When English is a trophy, you've got to keep it polished. It has to be perfect. Every little mistake feels like a failure, like you've tarnished it. But when English is just a tool, you just need it to work. Did you get your point across? Did you successfully order that coffee? Great, the tool did its job. All those tiny imperfections, a wrong word here, a slightly off tense there, who cares? They're completely irrelevant. This attitude isn't new. It actually goes way, way back. In the late 1600s, the ruler of the Netherlands, William III, actually became the King of England. And this one event really framed how the Dutch saw the English language. It wasn't the language of some superior conquering culture they had to look up to. It was the language of an equal. So they never put English on this weird pedestal to be worshipped. It was just another important language. So here's the crucial part. This tool attitude isn't just some fun little cultural quirk. It turns out this relaxed, practical, good enough approach is perfectly, and I mean perfectly, aligned with how our brains are actually wired to learn things. So let's get into the science of it, right? Because the Dutch, maybe without even realizing it, basically stumbled onto a learning method that modern cognitive science says is, pretty much the best way to do it. Okay, first key concept, statistical learning. Your brain isn't a filing cabinet. It's not designed to just memorize random words from a flashcard. No, it's a pattern detection machine. It's constantly, automatically, scanning for patterns. What words show up together, how often, in what context. Let's walk through a real example. Imagine you hear the word substantial for the first time. You don't run to the dictionary. You just kind of guess from the context. Okay, it probably means something like big or a lot. Then, a week later, you read about a substantial investment. Your brain kind of pings. Hey, there's that word again. By the third time you see it, maybe in made substantial progress, your brain doesn't need a dictionary. It's already calculated the meaning on its own. And that is the absolute key. Your brain doesn't want to store a dry definition. It wants to build a rich, three-dimensional map of what a word means. This is exactly why stopping to look up every single new word you see is actually a bad idea. You're interrupting your brain's natural and much deeper learning process. All right, the second big concept from cognitive science is something called the zone of proximal development, or ZPD. Honestly, just think of it as the Goldilocks zone for your brain. Not too hard, not too easy, but just right. And you can see it right here. If the stuff you're consuming is too easy, well, you get bored. Your brain just checks out. But if it's way too hard, you get anxious, you get frustrated, and your brain basically shuts down to save energy. The sweet spot, that ZPD, is right in the middle, where you understand maybe 70–80% of what's going on. It's just hard enough to keep you on your toes, but not so hard that you want to quit. Okay, so this is all great theory, right? But how do you actually do this? How can you build your own digital Netherlands no matter where you live? Well, the answer is what we're calling the three-layer lazy method. So the whole structure is actually pretty simple. You spend the huge majority of your time a full 70%, on what we call foundation material. This is content that is comfortably, easily, right in that learning sweet spot for you. Let's break this down. That foundation layer, 70% of your time, is all about just keeping English around. Think YouTube videos, podcasts, stuff about hobbies you already love, where you get almost all of it. The goal isn't to study. The goal is simply presence. Then you've got your stretch layer, about 20% of your time, where you're pushing yourself just a little bit. And finally, the challenge layer. This is only 10%. This is the really tough stuff, like original novels or dense academic talks. It's the stuff most people try to do 100% of the time, and that's exactly why they burn out. But look, you can have the perfect method, the perfect system, and it's all going to fall apart without the right mindset. And honestly, this is the most crucial part of this entire explainer. This isn't about what app you download. It's about the status that English holds in your life. You have to understand our brains are wired for quick wins. They run on feedback and they need it fast. Traditional learning has this horrible, long feedback loop, right? You study for months and then you take a test. Motivation just withers and dies in that time. But the lazy method, it gives you tiny feedback loops every single day. You use English to ask for directions. Success. You watch a movie and actually get the joke. Success. These little wins are the fuel that keeps you going for the long run. So what can you do starting literally today? 3 things. First, stop thinking about study time and start thinking about existence time. Just increase the amount of time English is floating around you, even as background noise. Second, pick content you actually want to open, stuff that's in that 70–80% comprehension zone. Here's a rule. If you need willpower to open it, it's the wrong content. And third, and this is a big one, give yourself permission to be imperfect. Start using the language today, long before you ever feel ready. Because in the end, that's really the secret, isn't it? English isn't a subject you learn and then master. It's a tool that you just keep using, probably pretty clumsily at first, until one day you realize the fear is gone, and it's just a part of you. So I'll just leave you with this question. The real change isn't about finding a better textbook. It's about changing the fundamental status of English in your life, moving it from a subject you have to study to just a background element that's always there. So what are you going to change? Your method? Or the role English plays in your entire life?